Well, hopefully you came here looking to listen to the Unlearning Curve, and if you came for anything else, sucks to be you, because this is the Unlearning Curve. My name is Stuart Delony. I'm joined with JD Forehand and also Karl Forehand, where we talk about anything between mental health, faith, religion, deconstruction, and other crap that pops in our head. Like, is that a Buc-ee's mug? Is that what I was seeing there, Karl?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's
I've still never been in a Buc-ee's, but
So
I
you're
sit outside.
I have not either.
Laura went in.
I have
Laura
not
had to
either.
buy something.
I've seen the signs like around. We're in an area where it's like, it'll be like, next, there's a Buc-ee's in 200 miles, which I don't even know who that's for besides truckers. Like, oh, cool. I'll just keep driving.
Yeah.
I can hold it that long.
Yeah. So, yes, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to reach out to us and call us names or whatever you want to do, you can reach us at theunlearningcurvepodcast@gmail.com. You can also listen to this podcast on YouTube or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Last sesh, we talked about the myth of Satan. And as it just so happens, we're going to be talking about... I like the echo. Yes, we're going to be talking about also just lies and myths in this. Because, like, for me, like, we say that we oftentimes, especially when we are in religious circles, we say that we crave truth. But most of us just want a story that makes life feel less random. Whether it's faith, politics, fandom, different pews, same sermon. The real question is, if we believe in myths, which one actually kind of keeps us sane? So do you guys have any of these? Like, are there any myths or lies worth believing in?
I think the myth of the slippery slope. So if you're not in this church under this leadership professing our beliefs, then you're in danger of something. I don't know if people can articulate that usually exactly what the danger is, but
Satan.
they see it. Yes, they see it as very serious, very final, very debilitating, and it's going to overtake you. And those kind of things, but I'm just here to say it didn't happen to me. And I don't have any. There's very few stories out here in the desert about people going, "Yeah, I screwed up and got out of religion.
Got to go back."
Some of them do go back, and it's kind of like, I think they're like me. They want to be in those Bible studies when people bring up stupid shit and they want to say something about it. But Laura won't let me do that.
No, I was talking to a different podcaster this week. Sorry, I was cheating on you guys.
Yeah.
No, but it was someone that I wasn't actually on his show yet, but it was, and hopefully this won't be offensive, but I'll just be honest. He was talking about, oh yeah, like I know, I've heard you've deconstructed, but I deconstructed a way long time ago. And, I already did this like 20 years ago and I'm good. And then he starts talking about, yeah, but I still go to church. I still do the Bible studies. I still do all of this. And I'm going, cool. And when did you finish deconstructing, or when did you get out of ministry? And I'm like, I feel like I feel like deconstruction is essentially just asking questions and being curious and poking holes and seeing what is true and what isn't. And I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be done with it, dude. I was like, I don't think that's ever going to, I'm not done. And it was just kind of confusing him. And it was one of those things I feel like people have gone through, and it's like, well, I deconstructed and I'm good to go back. Because this lie or this community or something matters enough here, because I'm willing to just continue to do the song and dance even if I don't fully buy it.
Yeah, so I read your blog and it was really good, and I shared it with some people and so on. But can you talk about this? Wasn't the assertion that you kind of almost have to have a lie or a half truth or something to hang on to? I mean, truth is different than that. Truth is discoverable, and then when you see that, you see more, and you explore and you see more. But it's different than that when we're hanging on to the lie, and it's almost like, well, this is just untrue enough, or just kind of true, or just like JD says, unfalsifiable claims that are lies. Can you talk about that some more?
I think with like those falsifiable lies, and I'm not sure if this is exactly answering your question. I think there are things that the unknown is uncomfortable to us. And I think that we would be more willing to grab onto what appears to be guardrails or things that keep us steady, whether that's true or not, especially when we're raised in situations where, well, I mean, like a lot of us that were raised in conservative Christian foundations, it affected our worldview. It affected how we saw our parents, how we saw power structures, how we saw God, how we saw everything. And then as we begin to walk out of it, you begin to say, oh, wait, there's other ways to look at this. There's other ways to process this. This is different. And I don't know if I'm totally answering the question, but what you're asking me, Karl, but I think that there's those comfortable lies that keep us in safe places. And I think that there's like the unknown that if we lean into it, it can be scary, but it leads us closer to what is truth.
Is it just that we all agree? I mean, well,
I hate groupthink, so saying we all agree on something always just makes me like feel weird, because I've been in those situations at church, like let's all just stand up and say this together as a congregation, and we're just mouthing stuff, rah, 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 and just following the lead in it. I don't know, like I think that there are things that feel true in life that we can't necessarily define, like love, to know that someone loves me, and I can try to like quantify it with actions or presence, or are they showing up in my life. And that's not necessarily believing a lie, but that's believing something that, you know, we want to be true and we kind of feel. And it's in love usually should be some sort of a communal effort. Do I love this person? Do they love me? It goes back and forth. I think it's different when that's more individualized, but when we get into like a group mentality, I think to keep the group together, we have to make the lie, and everyone kind of has to agree or someone has to leave. And so then it's less about truth and more about belonging and control, of course.
Yeah, maybe fitting in instead of belonging. Yeah.
Yeah. Or fake belonging.
Fake belonging, yeah, false assumptions. The other day when I was reading, so I started mentoring a couple of kids, and then now I'm the reader for another 20 minutes of the day. And then my wife has things for me to do with this other kid, helping with his math and so on. But we were reading in the place where we were supposed to be reading, and some teachers came in and started talking real loud on whatever they were working on. And the little girl that I was reading to went and turned her head like that. And then she looked back, and then we kept reading, and then she looked over there again. And I was this close to saying, can you guys tone it down a little bit? And about that time, someone from the door over in the other end of the room was yelling out to these two people. You know, these are all teachers and teacher-like people. And so since I didn't say anything to them directly, I talked to the coordinator and the principal about those things, and they kind of put it off. Well, that's a place for teachers to land, and it's probably, you know, we can move you way down the hall where it's totally inconvenient to you. And I said, well, I'll just make the best of it. So I decided to drop it, right? So it's kind of like we don't ever want to face the hard stuff inside a group, right? We just kind of try to avoid that. And so one of the things is going along with the lie, you know, and it's not called a lie. It's called, well, we'll understand it better by and by. We might, you know, maybe God we'll figure that out later. But for now, we're just going to say this, and we're just going to say we believe this, right?
I think also I'm curious if the lie now, how you were mentioning this, is also sleight of hand, to where it's not really like the plot. Like when if we're using your story as an example, you were there with the child working on reading, right? So like the whole plot of school and all of that you're doing is we need to help this child learn and grow here.
Right.
And I understand other shit happens and teachers, you know, need to do whatever. But but this idea, like what you're talking about, it's the whole plot is we're here to educate children. This is what we're here to do. But then we get caught up in all this other BS that has nothing to do with the plot. And then I think lies they can seep in and they're easier, but I think they distract from bigger questions often too.
I've also noticed, and we have a teacher in our midst, and no one I respect more than teachers, but I also what you see, you know, in an elementary school is you'll see teachers that are regulated and under control, and their class is regulated and under control. And you see other teachers yelling, screaming in the hall, and their kids are disruptive and not regulated, can't really figure out, you know, it's just, but within a church, there has to be order. When people go to that decently and in order verse all the time, it's just got to be kept at a certain level. So you can't really question things. You can't really say, I think we're doing it wrong, that gets you in trouble pretty fast, which I found out at my last church that I attended. Right. If you just say, I think that's right. I don't think you're approaching that right. It's not working. It's detrimental. Well, that's the way we're doing it. So, it's got to be simple, even if it's a lie, right? To your point.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting because there are times, and this has nothing to do with it, but it does speak to me lying in church ministry. So I'll just share that one. But I remember, because sometimes it does. I think as lies are effective, like control measures as well. I worked with at-risk kids, and we had a particularly hard group of kids we had for a weekend that we're doing outdoor rec with. And they would always want to do other stuff because they were, oh, we got to go. This is stupid. Let's do all this. And I'd be like, I eventually figured this out. And I was like, hey guys, I'm pretty cool with you guys doing what you want to do, as long as you stay within these boundaries. If you guys do this, I'm going to get yelled at by Kyle. And Kyle's a dick, and he loves yelling at me. And then they would be like, oh man, I don't want that to happen to you. You've been cool to us and everything. Yeah, I get it. Thanks, guys. And they'd be like, oh, then like later in the weekend, oh, we're going to go sneak out and do this. Guys, Kyle is going to do all of this. And I asked if we can go out. And he said, no, Kyle never existed. And so there's no counselor named Kyle. There's nobody there that was named Kyle. But that lie was effective. And they had a great weekend, and it kept them within these weird fake boundaries.
Wow,
and for me, it was survival, not getting a bunch of kids lost in the woods that are doing stupid shit and they didn't get hurt.
A great illustration of Satan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was in the wilderness. I was tempted with lies.
Or God, even, honestly. It's like,
it's true.
If we do that, we're going to be punished by God.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm tricking you into submission with this. Yeah. And it was a functional lie. It was a functional lie because it kept them safe. I didn't steal anything from it, but it was creating a totally false narrative that we all had collectiveness about, because people would, like, around the fire, like, you'd have kids and they'd be like, fuck Kyle.
Yeah.
Because these are at-risk kids. I mean, yeah.
This is another big thing, though, is, of course, the us versus them thing, but also just having a narrative. Like any cult, any religion, you have to have a shared narrative. I mean, that's like one of the base fundamentals of like society as a whole, right? If we don't have some sort of like shared understanding, then we have enemy because we don't know what to expect from each other. But yeah, it's a super big technique, and it makes sense. It helps a lot to have that kind of like shared narrative, shared vocabulary, these kind of things, especially if one of your key phrases is "fuck Kyle" or it's Satan or whatever.
Yeah,
but Kyle on South Park.
Yeah,
God damn it, Kyle. That's all I think of.
Yeah, but like so much of what we've talked about with, we grew up in faith and around all of this, and community and congregation and all of this. Can we build community without a myth? Can we build these things without these? And I'm not saying all myths are lies, but I mean, it's a shared story, maybe.
Yeah, story.
Lie. Yeah.
I think there's always going to be some degree of myth making, right? Some degree of like, that's just kind of how human memory works in general. Plus, we always want it to be more epic or whatever, insert word you want it to be here. So I think it's going to happen. I think obviously a big thing that we have to protect against is like letting that spiral out of hand, whether like we can see it obviously being a problem in religion where you have these giant superstructures form that like are just used to control people. And we can also see it in politics, obviously, with like these, cult of personality things that are going on in various countries. We don't need to name any specific ones, but yeah. So I think we have to, but to that point, I think part of it is we have to create counter narratives of and definitions of these things. Like, I guess to get in, like what it means to be like an American or to be patriotic or things like that. You have to redefine terms. That's a thing that I like, at least in my classes, try to harp on a lot. Is like, you have to define your terms, because what you say what you mean when you say this word may be different from what someone else says. So you have to tell me what it means. Otherwise, again, we'll have confusion. Confusion leads to chaos and also anger and all the things we don't want in society, right? So.
One of the things I'm doing with those kids is some of them want to write books. One of them is like third grade and he's got a published book. It's real short. So they sends those kids to me and talk about writing books and so on. And they all have their little flip books that they've created and so on. But I'm trying to talk to them about story, and how to tell a story. And the hero's journey and all that, and how most of our movies and good novels follow that pattern, kind of the hero's journey. So, JD, I think you're right. Storytelling and myth is just very important to try to find some meaning, but then stories weren't meant to be like doctrine.
Or to be taken literally.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think you understand that better than anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, and talk about what specifically?
Yeah, so it's
About,
not, so what are the things that are true about story and what's not supposed
I
to be
mean,
true about
yeah, I mean,
story?
teaching history, obviously you see a lot of stuff. And like, I think I see it a lot here teaching because you get a lot of the education system here, and it's kind of becoming like this in a lot of other places too, but it's a lot about tests and rote memorization and things like that. And so you run into people who just want the answer. And like with history, especially the further back you go, there's no answer. There's this source says this and this source says this and these two sources agree, but this one disagrees. And like you try to come to it's the same as any research, right? I was doing research on the brain I'm doing a lecture on Halloween, scary films, and why we have reaction to scary films and why we also like them. And you can go in and look at sure, we can see reactions on MRIs or EEGs in the brain, but we can't know exactly what it is, right? We can get a pretty good guess. But that's the point, is we just have to find the best understanding that we can of it, I suppose, and look at a lot of different sources, and then also be, just like we are with any scientific method, we have to be okay with being wrong or being proven wrong through future research.
Mm.
But again, I think, Stuart, you were kind of making this point earlier with like this making everything dogmatic and kind of it like crystallizing over time and not being open to change anymore. People get scared of that, and it threatens their control and all the things we've talked about over many, many episodes on this podcast. So yeah, I think you do have to find the things that are true. And again, even if there is some exaggeration or something like that, as long as we are using it as a positive shared meaning or metaphor for our group, whatever that is, whether that's a country or the world or human beings, then I think that can be good. We just have to be, again, careful not to get too married to that narrative and not to deify any sort of person and that's in power or that we like look up to. My friend and I, when we used to do our old politics podcast, we'd always say no heroes. We say like no gods, no heroes, basically. He wouldn't say that because he's a little more religious than I am, but I would say that because I think when you start to make even people who you think you're very close to or anything, once you start to make heroes out of people, you lose the ability to criticize them. And if we lose the ability to criticize ourselves or someone else, then that's when the myth making, I think, starts to run out of control. You get the snowball effect, and I think it's dangerous. I hope that rambly answer was kind of what you were looking for.
Yeah, did.
I'm gonna let me ask about this because Karl, you mentioned this too, and I think I'm curious about when we talk about myth making, how it also hits us culturally based upon what kind of stories that we're used to hearing. Like you'd mentioned, Karl, you mentioned like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, which is very much westernized, how we view things. There's a conflict, there's a problem, and there's a resolution to the end. And JD, you may know this better than me. I'm going to butcher this. I believe this is a Japanese term, but this is a lot of like Kisho Tenketsu. Kisho Tenketsu. Okay. But it's a four-part structure, I'm reading this now, of classical Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Vietnamese narratives. Parts are summarized as introduction, development, twist, reversal, and there's some resolution. But the biggest thing that they talk about in this is that the narrative structure doesn't center around conflict as part of the structure, which is what we're always used to. All our stories always involve conflict. And I'd just be curious how much of this like Joseph Campbell-ness myth making is just baked into the way that we tell stories in Western culture, and less resolution, less exactly, I don't know, neat storytelling can often proliferate in, I even say Eastern cultures as well too, which is such a Western culture way of putting it. I don't know.
Yeah, because it is always fun because when people are like, "Oh, it's like so much better over there," it's like, no, you just don't understand.
It's just different.
It's just different. We all got our goods and bads, and there are places that are better or worse. But
yeah,
that's a side tangent. But yeah, I think that's part of it, right? It goes back to the idea that we can't get locked into these kind of narratives or ways of doing things, because if we look to these other places, whether even if it's just different traditions that we've kind of put by the wayside and focused on whatever we're using now, I think by limiting ourselves, we lose the ability to do that, to reshape these narratives, to make them, more applicable to our day and age, or more healthy in terms of the end result of the application, whatever it is. But I think we have to be adaptable. We have to always be updating our knowledge and our tactics.
I may be wrong
Like that.
about this, but I think stories kind of connect your midbrain with your thinking brain. Where there's, a story is part of our memory making. It's part of our, so we'll know how to act next time. So we'll know what to think. So we'll know what to believe, and that's type of stuff. So we tell those stories to get our brain involved, but then we also are really hesitant to question that story once we realize it's of some value. If it has some benefit to us and makes our story more reasonable, then we have a hard time letting go of it, because I'm convinced, I told a story about a dog a while ago, which obviously in relating that to humans, it falls apart pretty fast, right? There's value to telling that story to kind of introduce it and get our brain interacting with our memories and what we already know. It's valuable, but I think it's only valuable long term if we keep questioning it and we keep saying, well, that part of the narrative is not exactly right. It doesn't apply to this situation.
I like that.
And I'm not going to build a big group that way. To build a big group, we all have to tell the same story over and over again and keep it simple where everybody can remember it, right? And so on.
No, you actually led into a question I'd written down when we were talking earlier. Is like, what is ethical? What does ethical myth making look like? And I wanted people to parse it, and that's part of it. I like, Karl, what you're mentioning is this myth fits here. This myth does not fit here. This gives life here. This is just stupid, and it doesn't fit. It's the wrong adapter for this situation. I can't charge my phone on this. It's kind of an idea. I don't know, but what I'm curious, JD, other ideas, like what is what's ethical myth making look like?
I don't know. I think
truthful lies. What is?
Yeah, because it's always tough, right? I think I view it in a lot of ways. I view like slogans and things like that, like them, and I think they have some utility, but overall, like I think they're in a lot of ways bad because we just try to apply them to everything. We use them like a Swiss Army knife instead of like a specific tool, and I think that's a big problem. Other than that, again, I think you just really have to stay away from things like hero worship or absolutes in general, I guess. But I don't know if I have a good answer. I would say, like with everything, we should be cautious about it, and we should, if we think, using best practices and best knowledge, we can apply it to a certain situation, we should try it, but then we should also observe it to see if it's working in the intended way. But I don't know, it's a lot, because obviously, like you guys are saying, like people just, what they want to do is just figure out the one thing that they can apply in every situation and just use that because it's easy. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to assess or anything like that.
Yep.
But obviously it gets us where we've seen numerous examples of where it gets us, and it's not particularly an enviable position.
I have a member of my extended family, I won't mention which one, but I always like to go back. They always go back to their childhood and say, I'm deeply committed to this because that's the way one of the other people in my family said it and did it. And so I'm deeply committed to that. That's kind of the extreme example of just latching on to a narrative and saying, this is my life.
So are you mentioning, because I like that, Karl, is like one possible way of looking at this, how tightly we hold to these narratives, or how much we identify with these narratives, meaning that like how much reverence or sacredness that we put on them to where they can't be touched?
Yeah, I think one of the sermons, or the types of sermons that I held on to longer than anything, was the ones that talked about the white knuckle approach we generally take to everything, especially in church, that we're holding tightly to something. They called it white knuckling. Those sermons meant a lot to me because I realized there were some things like that, for survival reasons, right? Back to the dog, right? The dog believes certain things about the world based on his reality, right? And my dog is vehemently convinced that there's danger outside of our door. And so anybody that approaches, he just tries to tear the door down, where he's normally not like that. So that's his white knuckle belief, I guess, if dogs have those kind of beliefs. But we're like that too, right? And once we're in a group, to belong, as you stated, we have to keep believing the lie. We have to say this. Maybe it's not necessarily an outright lie. It's not they're trying to deceive you, but they know this thing has holes in it. But we can't admit that it has holes in it, or that decreases the coherency of the group. Whatever purpose we're trying to accomplish, we think it's better. And you see that in politics and everything else.
No, you mentioning Winston's great. Your dog, of course, that we're speaking of, that does not like the mailman. But it's interesting when we have these ideas or traumas or myths or whatever it does. Like Winston almost just reacts gut. Yeah. I see a stimuli, and I'm already like, and I'm already ready for that. And when we do that, but I think we do it in smaller ways where we do that, and it almost makes us less human. Because we're just kind of, is that lizard brain or whatever? We're just acting, and we're just moving, and we're not even cognitively processing it. We just have these emotions or these feelings that are preloaded in this situation, and we already know what to do. And I just feel like that it's somehow like it pulls our humanity away when we do that.
What if someone in church stood up, raised their hand, and go, "Wait, I need a clarification of that. Does that really mean all? Does that really mean every time?" Mm-hmm. What would the rest of the church do? The rest of the church would be like Winston. They're like, this is out of control. We can't have this. Well, it's not, and the pastor especially would be, melting down up there going, I'm about to throw this guy out. And some of them do, when something like that happens.
Aversion to questioning, though, is a purposeful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows that churches are not a place of education. They're a place of indoctrination.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because on the flip side, like there was this, it was going around conservatives this week on the socials where I think it was some sort of Episcopal church or something, to where you have a dude that like stands up in the middle while someone else is giving their homily or sermon and being like, and starts bringing like, this is, the Lord is telling me to say this. And it's obviously just an agitator that came into the church and was being filmed on purpose for all of this kind of things. And that's not the kind of questioning we're talking about. Where you're going in, you're not even in that community. You're just going in just to be an abject dick, or trolling. But you're right. I mean, if you are part of the community, it is interesting that we have also made our like church services where there's not a spot to question. Right. Where there's not, it's that's just that the form and the function of what we're doing is not. I speak, you listen. I am higher than you. You sit lower than me. I control how long we're in this hot, sweaty room and how much bad music we sit and listen to. I control when you go to Wendy's or the Chick-fil-A not after church, not Chick-fil-A, but wherever. I control all this, and you sit and
And pastors joke about that too. Like, if we can get through this pretty quick, I'll get you out for the Chiefs game at 1:30 or whatever. Like,
it's always a lie.
It's like, and they're always fucking full of it. But what are you gonna do? Yeah. Goddamn lying pastors. I had something else to say, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I did too.
I think you were just saying, like, for you guys, just let us out of church because the Chiefs are playing.
Well, ours for when we were young would have been the Cowboys, which is embarrassing to admit, but
back when they used to be going. Before you were born, JD.
When I was like a baby. They won all their Super Bowls after I was born. That was me. That and the collapse of the collapse of the Soviet Union. You guys can thank me for that one too.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if someone tells a story and all we do is shake our heads and go, amen, then that wasn't a good use of a story to me, because you really didn't learn anything. You may have been indoctrinated with something or given a meaning, but you really didn't explore it or search it out, flesh it out, make it, explore the exceptions, the nuances of it. We really didn't learn much. We just learned what we're supposed to say and what we're supposed to parrot back and so on.
I love you say that, Karl, because it's like if we started talking about like, I'm going to church on Sunday morning because I want to listen to an example of persuasive speeches. It sounds very different than I'm going to hear from the word of the Lord. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But again, same thing, expectations, it really will shade things very differently in how you're walking into these myths and lies.
Persuasive speeches that I have to agree with.
Call it what it is, and then go. But it takes that mystique out of it. It doesn't make it like elevated or more interesting. It's just like, oh, I went and listened to a speech.
Yeah.
for an hour. Cool.
Yeah.
JD,
But-
were you going to
Shit
say
I've probably
something
heard
else?
10 times before.
What were you going to say, JD?
I don't know. I have obviously a lot of thoughts about all of it, but I do think that just kind of to that point of like it being indoctrination, I think if we're going to do anything like church, I think I'm a broken record on this, but I think we have to remove those sorts of hierarchies from it, and it has to be open to any sort of debate or questioning and stuff. And like you're saying, Stuart, obviously it might be susceptible to people like trolling and stuff, and obviously that stuff has to be policed. There has to be some level of maybe gatekeeping there, but like overall, I think people do pretty well with that. Like, I mean, anecdotally speaking, from like running my classes in a pretty open way where I allow pretty much any questions, and I don't get onto kids for almost any questions unless I literally just got done saying it and they were fucking around and so they didn't hear the answer. Then I give them a little bit of shit. But otherwise, it's like, yeah, isn't that the point? If we want people to understand this stuff and be able to defend it, if we want people to be good defenders of the faith, like, wouldn't you want them to have like every possible tool in their tool bag and be able to understand it inside and out? But that's not what it is, because that's not easy, and
that sounds like discipleship.
It doesn't make good followers.
Teaching people to think. Teaching people to process and think. What? But really, what you're telling us, JD, you were raised in a system where you are basically in a missions field where you're at right now, and you're able to do this since they're a bunch of little heathens and they're going to hell anyways. And so that eases it up on what you're doing. If you don't care about their eternal souls, you can answer their little questions and talk about stuff and make them feel good about life now on Earth. But
I think it has something to do with Tylenol. Tylenol was probably introduced at some point over there, and now they're marinating in Tylenol, and their babies are marinating in Tylenol, and that's why they're so evil.
And the circumcisions. I can't do it. You guys have to teach me.
He is a big fan of.
My voice is already kind of close to that.
Oh, we've got 2 more sessions. Okay, I've banned this moving forward. No more RFK Jr. until the last section, because we've got one in between before we actually hit to home.
We'll save it
All
for
right.
the last one then.
Save it. Okay. Grovel talk sounds good.